Hi, welcome joiners at this CIC webinar, Combating Loneliness in the Construction Industry. I'm Wei Yang, Deputy Chair of the Construction Industry Council. The Construction Industry Council is the representative forum for the professional bodies, research organizations, and specialist business associations in the construction industry. So today's webinar comes following the new data from NESCAFÉ that nearly half of the construction workers feel lonely at work. So we have three distinguished speakers joining us today. Bill Hill, Chief Executive from Lighthouse Club. Andrew Outram, Chair of CIC 2050 Group. And Nadia Roberts, Brand Manager at NESCAFÉ as Nestlé Professional. So I want to welcome our three speakers. So today we will have a discussion about what can be done to combat loneliness in the construction industry. So without further ado, I would like to invite our speakers to introduce themselves and also to talk about their organization and their working environment. And so we can start to keep the ball rolling to see actually how we can tackle the loneliness in our workplace. Although it's a very serious topic, but we want to keep the discussion live, and then let's see there's like a lunchtime entertainment program to try to make this serious topic more approachable to all of us because it's relevant to all of our lives. So now, may I invite Nadia to introduce yourself, please. Nadia.
Thank you, Dr. Wei. Yeah, really happy to be here. My name's Nadia Roberts. I work for Nestlé Professional, which is an out-of-home food service supplier. And I'm brand manager looking after our NESCAFÉ portfolio. So that's your tin and spoon portfolio, looking after such iconic brands as Nescafé Original, Nescafé Gold Blend, my personal favorite, and also Nescafé Azera. Yeah, we sell into all different types of workplaces and we do large formats, so really suitable for many industries. In terms of you know, how I work at the moment is probably quite different to everybody else. I know everyone's really different, but we work in like a hybrid format. So I'm currently at home, which is why it looks like a home setting, because yeah, I'm on my day one of being at home. But really pleased to be here, and thank you for the warm introduction, Wei.
Thank you for joining us, Nadia. Really look forward to hear more about your research and the campaign. And now, may I introduce Bill to introduce yourself, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Bill Hill. I'm the Chief Executive of the Lighthouse Construction Industry Charity. We are a charity that's 100% dedicated to the welfare and well-being of the construction workforce in the UK and Ireland. Our vision that no construction worker or their family should be alone in a crisis, and we deliver a whole portfolio of services to try and make that vision come true.
Thank you very much, Bill. Really great to see you and to hear about more from your work. And last but not least, may I introduce Andrew Outram, the chair of our 2050 group. Andrew.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm Andrew Outram. I am chair of the CIC 2050 group. In my day-to-day role, I am a senior cost manager for Turner & Townsend, and I work out of our Cambridge office. I too work on a hybrid basis, and largely our company and our organisation, we have hybrid working. We also have people who are more full-time in the office, and you know, like many organisations, we have many that are scattered amongst client offices as well. So, you know, talking within the workplace is incredibly important for us in terms of engagement.
Where you're on mute.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, so thank you for the introduction from all our three speakers. So let's start our conversation from maybe a fresh topic. We all have our breaks at work. So may I ask, what do you drink when you have a break at work? And then do you have it with your colleagues, or how important it is for you? Shall we start from Andrew first, and then Bill, and then Nadia, please?
So, like many quantity surveyors, I think I'm a caffeine addict. I enjoy a coffee. I try, I think, to mix it up as much as possible. I try and drink as much water as I can as well through the day, because it's better for me. In terms of sharing those, I think when I'm in the office, I do try to. I do think it's important to take that step away from the computer to, just catch up on things as well. Talk to others. I'm quite fortunate that we're in a shared serviced office facility, so actually it's quite going for a coffee in the kitchen or into the social spaces actually provides us with an opportunity to network anyway. But yeah, I do try and make the most of it and try and encourage others to come with me when I go.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, it's very much like Andrew, I'm a bit of a coffee addict as well, and I've got to say that I'm an Nespresso fan, which is also another Nestlé brand. So so thank you very much, Nestlé, for supporting us doing this. But I definitely helped the coffers of Nestlé by buying lots and lots of Nespresso pods. And what's very difficult is, I think, in the current environment, when the pandemic came along, there's a lot of people, started working from home that they obviously hadn't worked from home before. And so it always makes it difficult to have that coffee pot conversation when you're working away from home. Although the construction industry, obviously, you've got all your site operatives on site, so they enjoy a good coffee break and enjoy that time together. But I think it's quite difficult when you've got this hybrid, or you are predominantly working away from home. How do you get that coffee break back into your life again? Because it is the source of a huge amount of germination of good ideas and discussion points, etc. So what we do is in a charity is that we have regular meetings over a cup of coffee, but via Zoom or via Teams as well, and drink a cup of coffee together and shoot the breeze. And it's just by doing that, not necessarily having an agenda, that you try to recreate some of the magic that you usually get around the coffee pot, but you still can't beat just meeting people face to face and having that discussion.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Nadia.
Thank you, everyone. That's some really sort of insightful thoughts there. In terms of, my personal preference, as I mentioned, I work on a hybrid model. So I do usually 2 to 3 days in the office, day at home. Did my Monday and Tuesday with this week. So at home for the rest of the week. And we actually work in an open plan office for Nestlé, and we come in mainly for sort of collaboration and meetings. So it's a real chance for us to all get kind of together. In terms of the facilities, we've got like a kitchen on each floor, and we've got all different types of free to serve coffee. Like I mentioned, I've got a preference for Nescafé Gold Blend, but there's kind of something for everyone. So it's kind of really easy to make. I think that's the solution you get with instant coffee. It's just, add water and then just personalize how you like it. I would say that I don't break as often as I probably should do or would like to. I try and, break as well, minimum once an hour, which might sound a lot, but I think it's not always easy to get away from your desk when you have a desk-bound job. And I think personally, I like to break with at least one colleague. So I really value that kind of water cooler moment, that time when you're waiting for the kettle to boil, just to kind of have that really informal conversation. It's where you find out so much information anyway. So I obviously, really, really value my break. I tend to stick to one coffee a day, and if I really feel like I need another one, I'll go for a decaf in the afternoon, but obviously lots of water too, just to keep hydrated. And then I suppose, back to your initial question about, the importance of coffee breaks, and I suppose, why we're here in the first place. We've actually got some really kind of compelling insight to share that I think will resonate with many industries, not just the construction industry, which actually drove Nescafé's desire to help facilitate, well-being and connection in the work environment, and demonstrate just how important breaks can be. So if that's all right, I'd like to share my screen and just to bring these statistics up. So bear with me while I wrestle with Zoom. I'm not as familiar with it as I should be. There we go. I think that's worked. So as you can see on screen, the campaign and the idea and the thought process kind of stemmed from some really compelling pieces of insight that we'd sort of come across from various different sources, which are all kind of stipulated at the bottom of the screen. But there's a few for us that really stood out. So loneliness coming at a really considerable cost to employers, equating to £2.5 billion a year. 1 in 6 workers actually experience a mental health problem at any one time. And the cost of mental health related sickness absence to UK employers was actually £56 billion in 2021. Another few from us is that 3 in 10 business leaders actually make employee health their #1 priority. So we can see that it's actually trickling down and people are wanting to facilitate and do more things, you know. So we're kind of here to help them, and hopefully some of the solutions that we bring to the table later will enable you to make your working environments more positive areas. And finally, and one that's sort of really compelling and kind of has an economic benefit as well, is that for every £5 spent, well, £5 for every £1 spent is the average return on employers investing in the well-being of their employees. So from this research, you can kind of see that, well, not only is investing in your staff the right thing to do for employee well-being and sort of boosting morale, but it will also actually benefit your business. People expect a lot more from their places of work, and the pressure is on business owners to look after their teams and create cultures that nurtures their employees. So having the break, as I'll come on to talk about a bit more later, is a really simple and cost-effective way of bringing people together to try and eliminate some of these bigger issues that kind of are created as a result of you know, pressure on people's well-being and mental health. So in terms of the importance, and I suppose how this links back to NESCAFÉ, let me just change this slide on my screen. Leaning on some of the insight that obviously I've shared, we've actually identified 3 focus areas which we believe are tensions within the post-COVID modern world of work. This being, like I mentioned, employer pressure to actively promote well-being, a heightened desire for human connection at work, which isn't always possible when you're working by yourself or you're doing a job that kind of requires focused thought, and then also like a drive within places of work to become more positive and nurturing environments. And we believe that, you know, at the heart of these tensions, NESCAFÉ can really own the position of bringing these together, and kind of the, you know, the humble coffee break. It's, like I said, it's really easy to implement, it's cost efficient, but it can become a real facilitator of maximizing time away from work and just create that meaningful moment between 2 or more people. You know, everyone deserves a good cup of coffee. We all love coffee. We don't need to convince you of that fact, but it's about encouraging people to take those breaks. Is a really easy way to kind of establish well-being. So yeah, back to your question about, you know, the importance of breaks. It's absolutely huge, and it's got the potential to drive really big change and improve workplace culture.
Thank you very much, Nadia. And it's very insightful research. Really grateful you have done this campaign. And one of the audience asked a question, say how we relate this to the construction industry. That's naturally leads to our next question to Bill. Bill's Lighthouse Club is the only charity that provides financial and emotional support to the construction community and their families. So I want to ask Bill, could you share what is Lighthouse Club delivering or developing any initiatives to mitigate the effects of loneliness in the construction sector? Bill, thank you.
If we go back to the vision of the charity, is that no construction worker or their family should be alone in a crisis. And without a doubt, we have got some pretty major issues within the construction industry with the well-being of our workforce. And as a charity, we deliver now 6 services that are absolutely free to everyone in construction. The first service is that we deliver a 24/7 helpline. It's there always on, and it will give emotional, physical and financial support to any construction worker or their family in need, completely free. And for those that are not quite confident enough to make that phone call, we've got a text text hard hat service, which again is a free service, which will put them through to somebody to text back to them and have a conversation with them, albeit by text. The third service is a little application they can download for people who want to learn a little bit more about what they can do to combat their situation, filled with information, advice and guidance, again, around those 3 pillars of emotional, physical and financial support. And then the fourth one is more of an educational process. We've got a Wellbeing Academy, again, completely free. It's filled with courses where people can self-pace on building resilience, work-life balance, stress management, all the things that can really get to you when you're at work. And the fifth one, I think, is really important to this particular presentation, which is we've built a nationwide network of lighthouse beacons. And this is something we haven't developed. These are not ours. They are things that are already in existence that we've just curated all of the places where people can go to if they're working away from home or on project work, where they are feeling a little bit lonely. They can find out where these places are, and they can drop in, and these are non-judgmental environments with other people where they can socialize, have discussions in a non-judgmental environment, and help. And then the final thing, which we're just launching in Construction Week at the beginning of May, is a big portal where all this information will reside. It's called makeitVisible.info, and it's launching at the beginning of May. We're still polishing it at the moment, ready for launch. But this will be a portal where anybody in the industry can access and find out all the places where they can get help and support. Any aspect of their crisis or how they're feeling. So we just got lots of activities to surround the individual and give them every opportunity to get help and support if they're feeling a little bit lonely.
Thank you very much, Bill. That sounds very impressive, and encourage everybody to look onto your website to find out more information and then join your portal as well. And also, I understand you publish a Building Mental Health Charter. Could you share with us about the principles of in your charter, please?
Is it just a shell?
Yeah, so the Building Mental Health Charter, we started around about, I think, 3.5-4 years ago. And the whole idea of that was to try and get the industry to basically sign up to getting this. Is very much the first stage in a 5-step process to get a company from base zero to actually putting a reasonably solid well-being program in place. And the very first step of that is signing a charter. And the charter is basically, it's in senior management of your company to sign up to saying that the well-being of our workforce is paramount and is a priority. And if you don't get that very first step in the process underpinned, then you don't have a good foundation to build a well-being program on, because if your top level management are not bought into this process and don't feel that it's important, then no matter what you do elsewhere in the organization, you will not get that through, because if there's any changing priorities, that well-being program will always be put to one side. So you've got to have the commitment to take on this type of activity, and that's step one in a 5-step process to getting to what we call base camp of well-being. And then once you get to base camp, you can really then do lots of other things to create a new summit to go for after you reach base camp.
Thank you very much, Bill. That's great to talk about leadership as well. And now I want to ask Andrew. Andrew is the chair of our 2050 group, which represents young professionals in the construction industry. I want to ask Andrew, how important is communication to young professionals? And do you think the current hybrid way of working presents particular challenges to young people in the industry? Bill talked about leadership. So from young professionals' perspective, what do you think? What are the challenges and what can be done in the sector? Thank you.
I think there are several parts to this. Firstly, I think communication is incredibly important. And I think that communication has to be top down in terms of not just the young professionals talking to other professionals within the industry, but having management supervisors and everybody within that chain, actually talking to those as well. We have to remember, I think, with a lot of our young professionals that when they come into this industry, this is their first step onto that career ladder or their first step into employment. So coming into a full-time job after A-levels, after GCSEs, going into an apprenticeship, actually we're putting them into an environment that they're perhaps not used to, they haven't explored before. So starting those conversations can be difficult, can be challenging, and can be quite daunting if you're the person that then has to make those, has to break the ice to take those steps to make those conversations happen. So communication in that front, I think as an industry, we have to try and break that ice a little bit more, a little bit better as managers, as the role models, as the people that are guiding our young professionals into the industry. There's another avenue, I think, from a young professional's perspective that we have to consider: networking. Networking is such a powerful thing, and understanding that, finding other peers that are on the same level, broadening our contacts of, looking at who we can speak to, trying to establish common ground with other professionals, and just making that transition into the profession a lot easier. Thinking as myself as a chartered surveyor coming in, going on day release and then doing my chartership, actually that can be quite isolating at times, especially when you're working full time, you're studying, you're then going in and doing your chartership to better yourself and to better your career. Finding other people who are going through the same thing can be quite a release almost. So having those water cooler moments or those coffee pot moments where you're sitting there and you're talking to others and finding others that are going through the same aspect is an incredibly important thing. On the flip side to that, I think as well, is when we look at how hybrid working is, the other thing that we probably don't get as much now is the osmosis of information. So being present in the office all the time and having the other conversations that happen around the office, the knowledge gain that you get through just an off-the-cuff discussion on, say, procurement, might actually feed more into what you would learn at university. So taking those discussions that you would have, the informal chats and the informal discussions that allow you to put things into perspective, can make a massive difference as well. And sometimes I think we lose that, through hybrid working. But it's trying to, as an employer and as a team leader, a line manager, trying then to encourage the team to come in more. Have those little things, share those coffee breaks, share the lunch breaks, just a quick walk if you get, on the walk to the bus stop, if you're getting the bus home and things like that, just have those discussions and have those off the cuff discussions. Sometimes I think they're so powerful. And I think it adds a lot to what we do. So I do think it does present a challenge, the hybrid work. But I think there are steps that we can take to it. Teams, Zoom and all the other avenues that we have in terms of video chats and video conferencing. I think that makes people more available. But at the same time, I think it also fills up people's calendars a lot more. And I think that's where then stressing the importance of breaks and the importance of making sure you're getting your day in at the right points and getting your breaks at the right points, I think is incredibly important. I think probably more so, for graduates and young people coming through, is making sure, put your breaks in your calendar, make sure meetings aren't going through, don't go back to back, or, from a 9 to 5, just take those steps and make sure that they're there and get into that, it's okay to work late some days, but make it an exception and not the rule.
Thank you, Andrew. I think that's a good point. We have to make a special effort to think about how we can balance our work and break balance and work-life balance. I found personally, after pandemic, I seems working much longer hours per day, and also even start to work over the weekend. So I now to start to seriously think about how I can rebalance myself in terms of having proper breaks, even during a day when I work from home. Thank you very much for that. I think lots of people will echo what you have said. I now want to move past the question back to Nadia. As part of your campaign, you provide a step-by-step guide. It's called Make Chat Work Guide to encourage good communication and drive motivation and create meaningful moments for teams. Could you share a little bit more about the guide and also some insight of your recommendations, please? You are on mute. Too many things.
Yeah, is that working?
Yeah, it's working now.
Bound to happen again to the best of us. Yeah, I think before I share more details on the guide, I think if it's all right, I'd like to share some of the insight that we've had as a result of doing the survey with the construction industry members. So I think for the benefit of this audience, I'm going to share my screen again, just to bring some of those survey results up, because I think they can be really powerful to share. So bear with me 1 second while I just bring my screen up. Let me know if that is all right for everybody. So yeah, obviously, like we've obviously mentioned, you know, well-being is a really hot topic, and lots of people are doing lots of really interesting things to try and combat it. You know, following on from the insight that I'd kind of mentioned earlier, we created Make Chat Work in order to help businesses create, you know, internal culture at work that nurtures their employees' well-being. You know, we really think that having more meaningful conversations at work, employers can create better working environments for their staff, which will in turn then create better, you know, genuine workplace culture, promote supportive environments, and ensure employees' well-being is being catered for. Now, at the same time, we were obviously, we were alerted that there had also been some concerns around the well-being in the construction industry specifically. So I know somebody had asked about why Make Chat Work and why the campaign was going to be relevant for the construction industry, but actually it was the all-party parliamentary group on issues affecting men and young boys that was brought to our attention. And we really felt like we could create some sort of insight and research and tools that could essentially help this community to get to the root cause of these issues before they kind of escalated to get to some of the the worst case scenarios that obviously we're hearing about. And obviously a big recommendation as a result of this report was to create, you know, more stringent mental health provisions should be written into construction contracts in order to tackle the issues at the root cause. And it really sounds like Bill and his team are doing a great job in kind of promoting this and doing more to get things correct at the get start. So as a result of, you know, the initial piece of insight that I'd shared, and obviously, you know, the findings from the all-party parliamentary group report, we actually worked with a research agency to survey 350 UK construction workers, so people within small to medium-sized businesses, and we wanted to understand more about, you know, their experiences at work and what might enable them to then improve their work well-being. Now, you know, one of the most compelling stats to kind of come back from the survey was that almost half of construction workers said that they felt lonely in the workplace. This is obviously quite upsetting to hear, quite surprising for me, not knowing too much about the construction industry before I started working within this field. But obviously it's something that I think nobody wants to experience. Nobody wants to know that people are going through these certain things. So that stood out really in a big way for us. In terms of some of the other results that we found out, so we had further insight that kind of demonstrated 8 out of 10 of construction workers revealed that they having more opportunities to talk to colleagues around coffee breaks would actually make them feel less lonely. And then in addition to this, almost all of the respondents said that getting together for a coffee break is important for team morale. And again, almost all of them said that they looked forward to coffee breaks with colleagues. So whilst those steps probably aren't as insightful or surprising, it kind of poses a really great solution to try and alleviate some of the signs of loneliness and some of the experiences that some of this group are having. So for us, you know, we obviously felt really strongly about this, and so much so that we decided to enter into a partnership with the Construction Industry Council to deliver these insights, and also a set of tools and information that could help improve workplace wellbeing. Now, as you'd mentioned, we have actually worked on a tool guide, and if time permits, then yeah, I'd be delighted to kind of take you through some of the key aspects of what the guide delivers, and then some of the other toolkit assets that we've got that can kind of help you facilitate better working environments and nurture more positive morale for your staff. So obviously, the initial guide contains all the insight and some of the insight that we've kind of thought about already. You know, it's a short booklet, but given the amount of time we kind of spend at work, I think one of the research that I read said that in our lifetime we spend 3,500 days at work, and this includes actually 200 days of overtime. So, you know, when you were saying that you were doing too much work post-COVID, I think lots of people are guilty of this, and I think it's time when we kind of took a step back and really kind of reevaluated what we were doing and putting our personal health and well-being first. So yeah, the guide also contains some insight into signs to look out for. So there's lots of different signs of stress. They aren't always so obvious when you're maybe working in more of an isolated role. But yeah, there's some tips to look out for. Typical behaviors for stress, including taking time off work, possibly arriving late for work, missing meetings, sudden mood swings. One of the second kind of behaviors is looking out for burnout. So somebody experiencing a lack of pleasure in their job, a lack of belief possibly in their ability to complete their tasks. Maybe they're acting withdrawn or detached from what they're doing, you know, a loss of motivation. And then the third one, which obviously was brought to life in a big way through our survey, was actually loneliness. So the lack of motivation. If somebody's getting really stressed very easily, they consistently feel tired or lethargic, and they're taking an increased time off school, off work. So all these kind of behaviors are, I think you really have to kind of watch out for people. You need to be take responsibility and keep an eye on your colleagues to make sure that they aren't suffering from these things. So try and get to the root cause of these issues before it gets to a point where it's too late for that person. As with the findings of the all-party parliamentary report found out. And then separately to this, the booklet also contains some really simple but effective ways for employers to kind of boost the working environment. So thinking about things such as onboarding, you know, this takes up a lot of time. Sometimes it's costly. So encouraging connections early on and building that into mindsets and patterns for people can make it just seem like a normal thing to do, so that you're not having to kind of change behaviors. You know, it's kind of built in from the offset. Another couple of ideas that we had are, you know, having those regular check-ins. Don't forego them. Be strict about sticking to them, and make sure that you're not kind of leaving anybody behind. Creating possibly somebody who's going to champion the coffee break, somebody who's going to bring people together and actively promote it amongst your group of colleagues. And then also encouraging people to step outside of the workplace. I know Andrew mentioned earlier about going outside and taking a walk. I think these are all really great ways that you can kind of sometimes, you know, step away from work and actually socialize with your colleagues and find out a bit more about them, to sort of get to know them a bit more. And also it makes it more inclusive as well. I think people feel a lot happier at work when they feel included. They feel like they can be their own personal best self, and they can kind of share aspects of their personal life. So yeah, I mean, yeah, all kind of simple, effective ways I think are quite easy to put into place. But obviously we know that from experience, you know, having a coffee break and just kind of suggesting that as an idea is super cost effective. I mean, the cost of a coffee, it's pence. It's easy to do. You kind of just need a kettle, some milk, and, you know, off you go. You don't need a comfy breakout area. If you do, that's great. But, you know, you can kind of make it as sophisticated or less sophisticated as you like. And then aside from the guide, we've also got a few other tools. So we've got some printables, icebreakers, coffee preference charts. This is kind of a light-hearted take, but it's all about encouraging conversation. And then an interior design guide. Say if you have an office and you kind of you have a bit of a space where you can kind of make sure that the coffee break can be championed in, I suppose, a more decadent way, like a dedicated space to sort of sit down and break out. And these are all free to download from our website, and we would really encourage you to find out more and read through the guide just to see what you can do to make really simple changes to make a big difference. And I kind of wanted to finish by talking about the fact that we are also really pleased to be making a donation to Lighthouse charity, which as has been mentioned, will support members of the construction workplace and their families who require that emotional, financial and physical support. And we thought that, you know, the 24/7 support line was a really effective and great resource that, you know, we would encourage people to take up on. So yes, that's the guide, but I think from what I've said, you can kind of see that it's a lot more from the guide, and we really do want to act as a force for good and make a difference and try and enable positive change within this industry.
Thank you very much, Nadia. I think it's a lovely story to hear about the donation to the Lighthouse Club. And actually, the story started from NESCAFÉ want to sponsor CIC for this webinar. And we said, actually, rather than sponsoring CIC directly, why don't you give a donation to the Lighthouse Club? So we can see now we are all coming together to promote health and well-being in the construction industry. I think that's what CIC is about, to promote this joined up thinking. I'm really
Absolutely.
grateful for your support.
Well, thank you for letting us participate.
Thank you. And actually, before I pass on to Bill and Andrew, there's some specific question about the survey from the audience. One question is about how many people were surveyed, and then because the audience said he or she would love to see an industry-wide survey and to address self-employed people who seems to be felt through the support generously. So do you mind share a little bit more about the research background, please? Thank you.
There we go. So we actually surveyed 350 construction workers, and all sort of operating within small to medium-sized businesses. So anything ranging from 5 employees to 250 employees. And as I mentioned, the idea for the survey came about as a result of the all-party parliamentary report, which took place last September, I believe. And obviously some of the findings and recommendations from that, you know, we felt were really kind of strong, and they were actively trying to do something. And yeah, that's why it came about. But obviously the campaign initially had come about as a result of post-COVID everybody's working styles had kind of changed in a really big way. Obviously it impacted offices in a large way, but also other industries. So it was a combination of lots of things. We feel like we had a good kind of cut through of the people that we spoke to, but I would say that it doesn't include individual tradespeople. So it was specifically looking at small to medium-sized operations, so minimum of at least 5 employees up to 250.
Thank you. From our audience, seems there's some special focus on or concern about self-employed. Maybe that's an area we could think about in the future as well. Because work from home on your own without other people's support as a team would be quite a challenge, especially understand what are the latest development in the industry, and then how, if you are overloaded with work, and how you can get additional support, and then if you have you don't have enough contract come in, and how you can source them. And so there are many different challenges. So having a break sometimes is really a good way to help you to step out from your day-to-day work. And also, if I'm not sure whether that's something, just to start to imagine whether that's something the Lighthouse Club could do in the future, really to support more self-employed construction workers. For example, provide some networking for individuals to join together. Something maybe the Lighthouse could consider, just a random thought. Now, actually, I pass on the question to Andrew again. So you talk about the many initiatives the Lighthouse Club has been doing. So, so what are the steps? I think you mentioned some initial steps and recommendations for the construction industry to take. And then do you have any detailed insights you can share about particular steps or more details in these steps of how companies operating in construction can take to improve the overall welfare and the well-being of workforce? Thank you.
Yes, yeah, sure. To that point, I mean, the construction helpline is open to everybody in the construction industry, and if you look at the industry, it's very, very fragmented. So you've got over 400,000 companies working in construction, 3 million people working in construction, and 92% of those companies have got under 10 people in them. So it's very much a small business enterprise when you look at that. And if you look at all of the major construction organizations, they subcontract, 57% of that 3 million are either agency workers, self-employed, or on 0-hour contracts. So whilst it is very fantastic idea to get these people around a coffee pot and having them discussing things, if you've got a lot of self-employed and people on your site, they basically want to get head down, get their work done, and also they're brought on site in small teams, so therefore there's not an awful lot of integration that goes on to get that whole team spirit to bring it alive. And if I go through the 5-step plan to this base camp of well-being, one of the steps probably does address that. But the very first step, and I keep on saying this, you cannot get a program in place unless the senior management is involved in it. In fact, you can go even one step beyond that. If the client who is actually activating the project does not see well-being of the workforce as a priority, it's very difficult for the tier 1 or tier 2 contractor who's taken on the project to be able to inject that into that subcontracted workforce, because the time and the money is not available to make it happen. So we've got two roles to play here. One is to get the contractor involved and the senior management there, but also we need to go one step above that to get the client involved as well to make it really work. So step one, that charter, getting that agreement is number one. Number two is very, very simple. We've got a whole host of helpline cards, posters and everything that can go on the site to say to everybody, you do not need to be alone with anything that is bothering you. There's a helpline here. There's a safety net for everybody. And some companies will have an employee assistance program. But again, if you go back to those self-employed and the agency workers, they don't have anything. They don't have anything. They've got no port of call to go to get help and support. So what we deliver is that safety net for everybody in the industry, somewhere where they will not fall below. So that's there in the helpline cards and the services we provide with the tech support, etc. Are there. The third thing that needs to be done is the toolbox talk. And this is where you do need to put the tools down and get people round the coffee pot and talk about the things that need to be talked about and outside of the work environment as well. So have a toolbox talk about well-being. And again, we can facilitate those. We've got guys running around in multicolored vans looking just like this. We call it Make It Visible on Site. And we've got people there who are trained mental health first aiders, who've also got lived experience, mental health experience. They are tradesmen as well. So they build a really strong empathy with the boots on the ground and get them to break down that stigma that's attached to the male psyche. 87% of the population that works in construction are men. And we have a problem about talking about well-being and these type of issues. We've been brought up with a different psyche, and so it needs to be broken down, needs to get the conversation going. And these guys are experts, but also have got the empathy to break down that conversation. That's step 3. Step 4 is making your black hats, your supervisory people inside the industry, far more aware of people who may be struggling, giving them the tools. Very like the tool set that Nadia's been talking about there, which I think I'll get a hold of and we'll put them in the vans to get them out to the people on site. But that's the sort of tool set. It's recognizing when people are struggling and opening up the conversation. How are you? Not asking it once, but asking it twice to make a difference. So just make your supervisors more aware. And then the 5th step is what I call well-being champions. People who've got a little bit more, and we advocate the 2-day mental health first aid course as to be a well-being champion, and they just have more information and guidance to help somebody and signpost them to the right place to get support. So those are the 5 key steps. And for me, that gets you to base camp. It does not cost a lot of money to get to base camp. Those steps are very simple and easy to activate. But then when you get to base camp and you see the benefit that this makes in your business, you will, I guarantee it, you will want to create a new summit to take it to, because it does make a huge difference.
Thank you very much, Bill. Very impressed by what you have achieved. This one audience suggests actually we should really change our mindset of talking about coffee breaks to coffee connections, because actually it's a time for people to connect to each other and to really to have lots of new ideas generated through our communications. It's really about communication.
Maybe that'll be a new brand then. Maybe
yes.
Connections is a new brand.
Yes, absolutely. Good idea. Thank you for the suggestion. I would wonder whether actually Nadia and Bill, you could both write a blog for CIC, because one audience said they are very impressed by your survey and also your guidance and of course your knowledge for years on this subject. So if you can write a blog for each of you can write a blog for us, we can share that on our platform so the wider audience can benefit from your knowledge. And now, may I pass on to Andrew of my question, my formal question. I want to ask this from a young professional perspective. Do you see this guidance could have some challenge to be adopted in the work environment? And then what can be done to create a better mental health culture and to combat loneliness, especially for young professionals? Do you see any particular challenge for that group?
So I think there are challenges there. I think the biggest challenge, I think, particularly in a hybrid working environment, is having that opportunity to say twice, how are you? No, how are you really? Now, having those opportunities to do that, I think are probably less than they would be if you were in the office full time all the time or on site all the time. Now, there's, in separating out your work, you don't necessarily see people all the time, see them at their best, see them at their worst, and you may see that they mask it. So, but I think the key aspect to that and the key element that is in there that can, that we can do to, achieve better mental health is signpost. So signpost to within organisations, signpost the Lighthouse Club. From my perspective as a member of the RSCS, signpost Lionheart. Out on site, signpost, Calm, Mind, Mates for Mind, all of these organizations that provide you with an outlet or somebody to speak to show that we're there. And I think the biggest aspect of that is, as Bill mentioned, are those toolbox talks that get people talking. Biggest thing that we have, and particularly as a male in the industry, is talking to others. I'll stick my hand up. I'm not great at talking about my mental health or talking about any aspect of that. But I do know when I struggle, and I do have an outlet that I will, probably don't use it as much as I should, but I do have an outlet that I have there. And it's making sure that people are aware of that. I went through the 2-day mental health first aid training course, and I found it incredibly helpful, not just to prepare myself for helping others, but I found it actually gave me a massive reflection on my own mental health and my own mental well-being. And I think the more people that we get to do that course, that give that opportunity to understand mental health and understand the different types of mental health issues, the more opportunities we'll have to help others. And if we can sit there and encourage more, signposts, encourage more conversations, encourage these toolbox talks, then we'll be moving in the right direction. And when we're considering about, especially for the 2050 group, we're considering about the future of the construction industry. We want to be proactive and look at the future of the industry, and the future of the industry are the people that we've got in there that are working in it. We want to make sure that we're looking after them. So we need to be more proactive with it, get more people talking, have these toolbox talks, have the mental health first aiders there, and be able to recognize the signs where people are struggling, and just have the people there, the people within the organizations to put to pull them aside, take them for a coffee, have that discussion, have that water cooler moment, that coffee pot moment, and sit there and talk, or just give them the opportunity to talk. Or more importantly, as a mental first aider, to sit there and listen. And that's what we need. And they're the steps that we need to take.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I very much agree on the proactive part. Because sometimes people if you don't have that knowledge, sometimes even you have some signs of stress, you're not really even aware of that until it's developed into a quite serious status. So early awareness is very important, and then having this communication on a daily basis, so you can really exchange some stress, and even just spit it out would really be helpful for your mental health as well. And also, I think because I come from a different culture, sometimes I found if I join a coffee break, I found difficult to start a conversation. So what's the topic you start to talk? Because just a break into this silence. So actually having some typical question you can ask people is always very useful. For example, in the UK, we talk about weather a lot. If you have nothing to say, always say something about the weather.
Yeah, and I think, from, as we mentioned earlier about taking those steps to encourage those conversation starters. Actually, sometimes, if you arrive to a meeting early, start, as you say, start talking about the weather or start talking about the sports results of the weekend. Just find that common ground with people. And if you can find that common ground with people at some point, at some other point in time, you may find that there's somebody there that can listen, or somebody there that needs you to listen to them. And if you can do that and provide that friendly face, humanize what we do and humanize our positions in terms of where we are within the industry, then actually more people will be receptive to it.
Yes, thank you. When I prepared this presentation, I watched the NESCAFÉ Make Chat Work campaign video. I really enjoyed that video. It was very delightful. So I encourage other audience to watch that video as well. So actually, to finish our webinar this lunchtime, I want to ask two questions from this video. The first one is, who is the first person you think to chat to after a long day? So may I start from Nadia and then Bill and Andrew, please.
What a great question, Dr. Wei. Obviously, I'd seen this question last night and I was thinking about it, and I was talking to my husband about it, and I was saying to him, it probably really should be you, that you would be the first person I'd wanted to talk to, but actually it's probably going to be my mum. She's a real creative thinker. She's a real strategizer, and she loves a good bit of problem solving. My husband's very good for listening. So yeah, two very different people, but yeah, I'd probably say my mum, just to get some different perspectives of thinking. And when sometimes you feel like you're in a bit of a mind rut, you can't escape your thoughts, it's always great to just speak to a great sounding board, and sometimes they offer just really practical, sensible kind of tips. So yeah, I'd definitely say my mum. And yeah, she loves to talk, so I hopefully she'd agree, and she'd like to speak to me too.
Great. I talk to my mom every day too. How about yourself, Bill?
Well, rather flippantly, I would say my dog, because it always seems to be very pleased to see me when I come in, and it's very non-judgmental about anything I've got to say to it, and just lifts your spirit up after a day. But genuinely, I have a very, very good relationship with my wife, and we talk about everything, and she knows when I've had a good day or a bad day, and likewise the other way around as well. So we often just have a cup of tea together or a cup of coffee, and just chat about the day, and it just makes a difference just to draw a line under it and say, okay, that day's done, and move on to next.
How about yourself, Andrew?
Again, probably flippantly, I'd probably say my kids, because nothing brings you down to earth than actually talking to a 5-year-old about how many cartwheels she's done today. So I think sometimes I don't want to talk about work. So having the avenues of talking about something completely different that would just put a smile on my face generally I find works best. So yeah, if I need to talk about the hard stuff, it's my other half, my wife, who will sit there and listen. But if I want to completely take away from it, yeah, it'll be the kids.
Great. We all have our own solutions. That's great. And then I want to ask you one final question. So to relate to the topic we have about coffee break. So who influenced you the most on what to drink for a break? Can I start from Andrew first?
Probably my parents. I think growing up in a tea and coffee household. So yeah, probably growing up making and drinking tea and coffee is probably what's influenced me, I think. And then yeah, as I've come into this industry, you know, working for companies where doing rounds of tea were the norm. I think it's just carried on.
Great. Bill.
For me, when I started work down in London, I worked for an oil company called Aramco, and the Americans had a very, very strong coffee culture, and also there's a lot of Australians as well, from Melbourne and things like that. So they really got me into coffee in a big way, because I was a tea drinker before that. So I think they're the ones that influenced me most towards drinking caffeine, which I've very much enjoyed for a long, long time.
Thank you, Nadia.
Obviously, everyone's going to think I'm totally biased. I've been working for Nescafé for it'll be 5 years this Christmas. But yeah, prior to that, I'd always enjoy a coffee and a cup of tea. But I think for me, the weather dictates what I'm drinking. It's so cold and damp. You know, you really need something warm to kind of just to warm you up and kind of start you off for the day. So yeah, it's definitely a coffee in the morning for me, and water, and yeah, a couple of cups of tea as well, throw it in. But yeah, again, I think parents used to drink a lot of instant coffee. We weren't brought up on fancy coffee machines, so yeah, simple things for me. How about you, Wei?
Yes, actually, very much the weather and the climate influence what I want to drink. When I'm in China, I want to only drink green tea, but when I'm in here, it's always cold, so I always drink breakfast tea or coffee with milk. So we have 2 minutes left. We have answered as many questions as we could. We don't have time to answer all the questions, but we will put the webinar on the website, and also we will have blogs, I hope, from Nadia and Bill and Andrew about some of your thoughts about how we can tackle the loneliness issue in the construction industry. And also we will share the survey result and also the guidelines as well. So we have 1 minute left. Can we have maybe 20 seconds from each of you just to give one headline sentence about what we should do, or what's your hope of what we can achieve to tackle the loneliness in the construction industry, please? Let's start from Nadia, please. Nadia, Bill, and Andrew.
Thank you. Yeah. So for me, it's all about getting to the root cause of issues of loneliness before they get to a stage where it's too late. And I truly believe connections, breaks, whatever we want to call them, coming together. Coffee is obviously a really great excuse and a really good conversation starter to say. Sometimes it might not be as easy to say, oh, can I have a word with you? It might be easier to say, look, let's just go and grab a coffee, and then the conversation can kind of develop, I suppose, naturally and more organically. So for me, hopefully it's encouraging you to kind of get together more and connect to try and drive real change, so that we can have a positive impact within this industry that has been so heavily affected by some really serious issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill.
I don't know, people must think I'm number obsessed, but I've got three golden nuggets I always use. One is always ask twice, and make sure that if you do ask the second time, you give people time to answer. So that's number one. The second is listen non-judgmentally, which is very difficult to do. It's a very tough thing to do, to listen from somebody else's lens and listen to their problem, because it might not be a problem to you, but it's seriously a problem to them, to try and listen non-judgmentally. And the third little golden nugget, which is again very difficult to do sometimes, but just always be kind. There's no reason to be unkind to another human being, especially in a work environment as well. And if we all follow those 3 simple golden nuggets, I think the environment would be a better place.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Thank you. Andrew.
I think for me, the key ones are to, as an employer or somebody who manages people, to signpost where people can turn. So signpost, Bill and the Lighthouse Club, signpost other organisations that people might want to use. And then the final one, I think, as an individual, seek those out. Seek people out. Try and make those connections. Breaking the ice isn't easy, but try and find some point where you can make common ground. And as I said, it could be over the merits of coffee or 20-year-old Scotch whiskey. But at some point there will be common ground, and the more you can do that, the easier I think it is in the long run.
Thank you very much. This is all we time, but this is all we have time for. I just want to say thank you so much to Nadia, Bill, and Andrew for joining us and share your enormous amount of knowledge with us. And then I'm very hopeful for our sector's future. I think number one is identify the problem, and then we can all be positive and be proactive to tackle the problem. So I look forward to working with you all to make our sector much better, much positive, and with a bright future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.